Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training, we're going to be going over the first problem with society's current paradigm, and that is called the big lie of identity. Now, as always, inside of this module, what we are doing is we are continuing our theme of the psychology of transformation, right? We're talking about brain training, we're talking about brain programming. And what we're doing here is we're really unveiling the first problem with society. Now, the one that we're talking about here today is absolutely critical. I'm telling you right now, if you do not understand the first problem of society and society's current way of thinking, then none of the other ones are going to make sense for you. And so I would highly recommend, not only for this training, but for all of the trainings inside of this module, make sure that you are going through the trainings properly. Don't skip around. Don't try to go through the guide and skip ahead and be in a rush and all that kind of stuff, because those are the types of students who wear the failure uniform. You don't want to be that. You want to make sure that you are actually doing this properly, okay? And so these trainings inside of this module are the ones that are going to lay down the foundation for you to be able to completely train your brain for success. These trainings are going to program your brain so that way you can win and that way you can succeed at the highest levels, okay? So stick with me on these. I know there are people out there who are impatient. They want things now. They want all the tactics. And I know that you are an RWA student and you are not one of them. And that's exactly why you're going to be successful. And so that's why I want you to stick with me inside of this training. And so what we're doing here is, if you recall, remember we're talking about the big 5 problems of society, right? We talked about the big 5 on here. And the one that we're going to be going over here inside of this training is number 1, which is the big lie of identity. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. Let's go ahead and talk about what society says about identity, okay? Because society has a problem with identity. And this is what we call the first problem of society's current paradigm. Because what society does is society tells everyone that they are born a certain way, okay? They tell them that, hey, you're a natural at this, you're a natural at that, this thing doesn't come naturally to you, right? It's in your family, it's in your genetics, okay? And so we've come to believe that we are somebody specific with an identity and characteristics that define us as a person. We have come to believe, as a result of society's programming, that we ourselves are unable to change and that we should love ourselves just exactly the way that we are and that we shouldn't change anything. So society tells us, hey, people don't change. Be yourself. Stick to your roots. Don't forget who you are. Be true to yourself. Be authentic. Don't lose yourself in the pursuit of success, right? Be you. Find out who you are. Do what you want. Don't be one of those people that, changes and forgets their roots. And this is what society tells us. This is exactly what they repeat to us over and over and over again. And what this has done is that this epidemic that society has been feeding us has led us all to consistently go through life to try and define the question, who am I, right? So when society tells us all of these things, we constantly ask ourselves, who am I? Who am I, right? And so people become so busy trying to find themselves because they're always trying to ask the question, who am I? And so as a result, because of society's conditioning, people start to think, okay, you know what? This is not me, right? That's not who I am, right? This is me, right? These people are like me. I associate myself with this thing. I am this type of person. And what's worse is that over time, this sense of self that we start to develop because of society's programming and society's conditioning and society's way of thinking, it starts to become a very strong character. It starts to become more and more defined over time. It starts to crystallize and harden, right? And so what we end up doing is we form an identity and then begin to build our entire lives around things that conform and confirm the existence of this specific identity that we have built up. And so that's not only what ends up happening there. Society actually continues to reinforce this, right? Society keeps on telling us, hey, this is who you are. This is who you are. You cannot change. You are a fill in the blank. And so here's an example that I went ahead and put together for you, right? Society tells this person, hey, this person's name is Larry. Larry is not very smart. Larry's upbringing and track record shows that he's not much of an achiever and he's not good with money, right? Larry's an introvert. Larry is shy. Larry's anxious. Larry's not good with technology. Larry's a morning person. Larry's unable to change, right? That's just who Larry is. And so after a while, what ends up happening is that this person, after being told over and over and over and over again of who they are, they begin to say, okay, my name is Larry. I'm not very smart. Because of my family history, I'm not an achiever. I'm not good with money. I'm introverted. I'm shy. I'm anxious. I don't know much about a lot of things. I'm not good with technology. I am not able to change. That's just who I am, right? And so you can see, after being told all of these things constantly from society, eventually Larry starts to say, hey, that's who I am. I've been told that's who I am. And so what society ends up doing then is society ends up putting so much of a focus on our individual identities from such a young age that it creates an extremely strong sense of self-image and a strong sense of character, right? Because just because that's who somebody is or who somebody used to be, the question that I raise is, why is it assumed that this person is going to be the same person always, right? And so furthermore, society starts to reinforce these identities through various different means inside of society, right? And so society gives us a driver's license. That driver's license and ID says, hey, Larry is a veteran, his date of birth, his height, right? Larry is a US citizen from our passport. Larry got an F on top of his report card, right? The forms that we filled throughout our lives, right? Larry is a Caucasian male, right? And social media. So social media says, hey, this is Larry's Facebook and Instagram profile. This is who he is, right? And so then society as a whole reinforces all of the identities that we have throughout all of time and throughout all of our lives. And so altogether, all of these things start to form Larry's identity. And then Larry's identity becomes so strong and defined over time that Larry starts to believe his identity. We start to believe his identity. We start to believe our own identities. And then what we start to say is we say, yep, that's me. Yep, that's who I am. And then we start to identify more and more with being that person, right? With the label of that person and the label of what society has given us. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that we should get rid of driver's licenses and let people just change their names whenever they want so that way they can't be tracked and all that kind of stuff. But what I am saying is that in modern day society, obviously we have so many more labels and we have so many more pieces of identification that label us to being a certain way. And that is just a fact. Okay, but what exactly is the problem with this, right? What's the problem with being so static and having a specific label for our identity? Well, there are two specific problems that I want to highlight. There's a lot of them, but two specific ones. The first one is that when we look at the universe and we look at the laws of the universe and we look at the laws of nature, we see that nothing in the universe is actually static. Right? The universe itself is always changing. It's always expanding. And so everything in the universe and everything in the world is either doing two things. It's either growing or it's dying. And so we are actually a part of this world, right? We are organic creatures as a part of this universe. And therefore, this law of the universe applies to us as well. And so the law of the universe is this: the only thing that is constant in the universe is change. Right? This is where evolution, the change, right? These are all laws of the universe. And so society's notion that we can be static and that we are who we are and that we have to find out who we are, it actually goes fundamentally against the laws of the universe. What society says here is completely incorrect, both from a scientific perspective as well as from the laws of the universe. That's the first major issue that we have with what society says. The second major issue with when society says that we are static is that there becomes a conflict between the current self and the desired self when we say that we are static. And why is that, right? And the reason why that is because we as humans are naturally built, it is within us that we are always seeking something more than who we actually are. We as humans are always dreaming of improving, we're always dreaming of growing, we're always dreaming of movement. That's just who we are, right? And what we do is we as humans always form this image of our desired self, right? So we always have our current self, and then we are always dreaming, we're always imagining of something more, of something better, right? That's just who we are as humans. And so we always have this desired self that we are always striving for. And so what ends up happening is that when society tells us, hey, you are a specific type of person, you are the way you are, every time we dream of becoming that desired self, right? We are by definition dreaming of changing ourselves away from who we are right now. Every time we dream of being something other than our current self, what we're doing is we're actually dreaming of being somebody else. And so this is where the conflict happens, because society keeps on telling us, hey, this is who you are. You can never change, right? You can never be better. Society says, hey, there is no desired self, right? You must stay as you are forever. And you have to pursue the question is, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I'm going to go through life. I'm going to try to answer the question, who am I? And yet, if you believe society's narrative that you are static and don't change, then that means that you can actually never desire to achieve something better. You just can't. And so this is where people in society and those who follow society's way of thinking, they keep saying, oh, I can't do that. That's not me. I can't do sales. I can't do business. I'm not good with money. I just don't do that kind of thing, right? When they start to say these things, what they're doing is that's the conditioning of society that has programmed them to really live inside of their label of their identity. And so as a result, what ends up happening is that anybody who wants to improve themselves, it becomes impossible for them to do it, because they end up having to lose themselves along the way. Because by definition, changing yourself, improving yourself means changing. It means improving. It means becoming somebody else. And so you end up with this conflict between, oh man, I can't improve myself unless I start to lose myself. And I don't want to lose myself because, I'm supposed to stay true to who I am because I can't change. This is who I am. These are the labels that I've assigned to myself. These are the labels that people have given me. These are the labels that society has given me. I can't lose myself. And so as a result, you have this conflict within you, and you never actually break that to be able to change and become the person who can achieve your wildest dreams. And so this is the second problem with society's issue when they say that you are actually static, right? And so society says that, hey, your identity is static and it's fixed. And the truth is that this is the biggest lie ever told. This is what we call the big lie of identity, because society has it completely wrong. And I'm here to tell you, when it comes to your identity, you have been lied to, okay? And so let's go ahead and talk about your new understanding, your new way of understanding the self, and your new way of understanding identity, okay? Because according to the transformation paradigm, there's a completely different way to understand who you are and a completely different way to understand your identity. The answer is to shift away from being the what we call static self and move towards seeing yourself as the becoming self, okay? And so society's current way of thinking has attempted to cement inside of us all of these different types of beliefs, right? But have you ever really stopped to think about, who are you really, right? Like, what is this thing that we call our self, okay? And the truth is that what we call ourselves is really an identity that is built upon the stories and experiences from our past, right? Because the truth is that there's nothing concrete about what we call the self. It doesn't exist. We made it up. Like, think about that for a second. What is the self? Like, where is it written down? Is it in a book somewhere that I can go and read who I am? Like, where does that exist? It doesn't exist, right? And so this is the major problem with society's current paradigm and what it's taught us all, right? There is no self. It's always adapting and it's always changing, right? It's always changing based on the experiences that we have. And really, in order to achieve anything, we need to actually become the person who deserves it, who earns it, who actually has the behaviors, the character traits. We need to become that person. And the thing is, when we become this new person, here's the crazy part about this. Our old selves no longer exist. And so if our identity is always changing, then the question is not, who am I? The only important question that matters is, who am I becoming? This is what the transformation paradigm is all about. The question is not, who am I? Who am I is the question from society's current paradigm. The transformation paradigm says, who am I becoming? I gave you guys this example in the previous training, right? This is an example of Coach Malik, right? When he was just starting out and he was just beginning his journey, he is not the same person who he became later on in order to be able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars in his entire life, right? And he's not that same person. And so here's the truth, and here's what the transformation paradigm says, okay? The truth is that you can be whoever you want to be. Now, initially, this idea that you can be whoever you want to be, right? This idea sits at the heart of the transformation paradigm. This idea might be something that your brain rejects when you first hear it, right? When I first tell you, hey, you're listening to me right now, you can be whoever you want to be, right? Initially, the brain kind of rejects it, especially depending on how much programming you've had from the current society's way of thinking. It's very easy to reject this. But I promise you, the more you think about it, the more it's actually going to sink in. Think about it, right? You were not born with the way of thinking that you have right now. You were not born with the beliefs about the world that you have right now. You were not born with the experiences that you have now, right? You were not born with the labels and the views of what you call yourself, right? Those are all programmed into you. People told you, hey, this is who you are, right? You are a Caucasian female. Hey, you are an African American male. These are all labels that society gave to us. Now, I'm not saying we should get rid of labels, right? Obviously, they're useful. But what I'm saying is to be able to separate them and to be able to observe them for them not to be limiting and disempowering for you, right? All of these things are programs and conditions that were conditioned and programmed into you, right? These conditionings happen from our role models, our parental figures, school system, environment, our peers, so many places where we got conditioned to be able to have our identity become really the limiting factor for who we can become. And so what ends up happening is that these beliefs that we so strongly hold on to about who we are, they're programmed into us, whether consciously or unconsciously. A lot of times, for the 99.999% of the population, it's happening unconsciously. And the truth is that you can choose whoever you want to be, right? Even if society and yourself has labeled you as shy for the last 30 years, it doesn't have to be like that, right? As you're going to learn in upcoming trainings, reality is what you believe it to be true. So why not believe that you can be whoever you want to be? Right? And once you become conscious of the beliefs that you carry about yourself, then at that point, you are going to have the freedom to choose who you want to be. Because at the end of the day, here's a really awesome quote that I love. It does not matter what is true about your identity right now. Only what you believe is true. Because with work, what you believe about yourself will become true. Think about that for a second. It does not matter what is true about your identity right now, only what you believe is true. Because with work, what you believe about yourself will become true. Okay? This is the concept that we're going to be exploring more throughout this entire module to really hit it home for you, right? Even if you don't really believe me right now, all I'm saying is stick with me, just explore the idea. You can be whoever you want to be. And I got this diagram for you guys. I really love this diagram. It's really awesome because of the fact that it really illustrates you're born here, you had your path all around here, and then you're at today right here, okay? And then if this is your life today, this is your past and this is your future. And society's conditioning upon us has really made us think about looking back all the time, right? This is who I am. This is who I've always been. They always focus on the black lines and the green lines of the past, right? They always say, hey, you know what? I'm somebody who has always been a follower. I'm not a leader. I'm somebody who follows rules. I don't like sales. Making money is difficult for me, right? We get so caught up with these identity statements that we forget that the future is completely in our hands. It is our choice and our decision of who we become on a daily basis, right? This path that you're seeing, the green that is in front of you every single day, that is your choice, and it is a conscious and deliberate choice that you have the ability to make. This is what gives humans their potential and their power. It's the ability to choose. And so you're going to learn throughout this entire module, how do I become more conscious? How do I become more deliberate? How do I actually choose who am I becoming on a daily basis? So that way, who I become has that paradigm to effortlessly create the results in my entire life. I hope this is making sense because this is so absolutely powerful, okay? And so, like I said, don't worry about who you have been or who you are even right now. Continue to focus on who you are becoming and who you want to be. Because after all, this is a very powerful statement. I'm going to really hit this home. After all, the only person keeping score and maintaining this identity about you and your past and every small thing you've ever done, the only person who's maintaining that identity is you. Now, yes, of course, it is true. Our environment, people around us, our friends, our family, right? They do remind us of old versions of ourselves. But when we start to get to the practical part of this module, we're going to start talking about how you can take action on those things so you can start to use your external environment to reflect back into your new identity. But just to give you guys a quick actionable step that is possible for you to realize, because remember, at the end of the day, you are the only one who is keeping track of your identity. And so That's why there is so much power in changing your environment. Because when we live in our hometown, surrounded by the people, the places, and the associations that we have interacted with when we were past versions of ourselves, all of these things, what they do is they remind us of our old identity and who that old identity used to be. And so it's for this exact reason that changing your environment, honestly, I'm saying that it's probably one of the top things, if not the top thing, that you can do in order to really reinvent yourselves. Every single time that I have done it, I kind of do this cool thing where I imagine that I'm like a secret agent reinventing a new identity for himself, right, by moving to a new place. And then the beautiful part about changing your environment is that nobody knows who you are. And so as a result, you get to decide what this new environment actually knows about you. And so no one else is there reminding you of your previous life or past versions of yourself. And this is why it's so important to have this process of evolving yourself, this process of this evolution that you're going through. Now, even if you can't move to a different city, right? You might be listening to this and saying, hey, that's not an option for me. That's not something I can do at this point in my life. All I'm doing right now is planting the seeds. I'm just telling you, hey, know that this is really powerful. This can be something that you can do in the future. However, you can also do this by really clearing the clutter of past versions of yourself as well. This can include things like unfollowing and unfriending people who were a part of your previous life, those who are representations and reminders of past versions of yourself, right? They knew who you were when you were a different person, and you're starting new now. And so there's no reason why you even need them in your life. This is why cutting out toxic relationships as you reinvent yourself is so powerful, right? Maybe moving to a different area of your town that you have never lived before. That's also extremely, extremely, extremely powerful, right? Changing even just the organization of your room and your office, right? All of the associations that you made. This is why we had you guys do the clearing the clutter activity, so that way you could really start to elicit that, hey, I'm becoming this new person. I do things differently. I think differently. I have different habits. That is the cornerstone of success when we talk about being able to have the income that you want, be able to have the life that you want, be able to have the health that you want, the relationships, the connection to something greater. In order to have any of those, this is all what we're talking about is the prerequisite. I'm not talking about just changing your environment. I'm talking about everything we're talking about here in this module and the lie of identity. It's so absolutely critical. I'm telling you, once we get to the tactics and the strategies, those things are quite simple. This is the part that the vast majority of the people struggle with, okay? And so as you start to make these changes, big or small, what happens is that you're getting rid of the reflections of your old identity, and our brain starts to break those subconscious patterns of being our old selves, and we start to open up doors for us to be able to begin to transform into this new identity for ourselves. This is why what it is that we are talking about inside of this entire module is so absolutely powerful. And so what I've gone ahead and done is I've gone ahead and put together a quick table for you guys to go ahead and show you a summary of what we're talking about here with problem number 1 is society's current paradigm says that, hey, you are the static self, you are the fixed self, versus the transformation paradigm says, hey, you are the becoming self. Just because you are one version of yourself right now does not mean that's who you are going to be for the rest of your life, okay? And so a couple points that the society's current paradigm has compared to the transformation paradigm. And so society asks, hey, who am I? Versus the transformation paradigm is asking, who am I becoming? Society says, hey, you are born this way and you can't change who you are. The transformation paradigm says, hey, we were born into an environment and who we become is the byproduct of our inputs, thoughts, choices, and actions. Society says, hey, accept what you were given, the hand that you were dealt, you cannot change who you are. And then the transformation paradigm says, hey, accept that you can be whoever you want to be and achieve whatever you want to achieve, right? Society says, hey, don't try to be something that you're not. Versus the transformation paradigm says, become whoever you want to be and don't feel bad about losing yourself in the process, because that self was never actually you in the first place, right? And so society says, hey, stay true to yourself, be yourself, don't forget your roots, don't forget where you came from. Versus the transformation paradigm says the self doesn't exist. It's merely an illusion of an identity that was built up based off of the stories and experiences from your past. Okay, so this is so powerful. I cannot tell you guys how powerful just this problem and what the transformation paradigm says about it is so absolutely transformational. And so at the end of the day, the bottom line is that the person you believe who you are is nothing but an illusion created by your own mind and imagination. Okay, you are not just anybody. You are who you decide you want to be. So the only question that is important is who am I becoming? Because the truth is that you are always becoming someone new. It's the law of the universe. You're always becoming someone new, whether you are consciously realizing it or not, okay? Just as you were a type of person in the past, you will also become someone else in the future, right? But for most people, they're becoming someone new while they are passively going through life and while they are asleep, right? They're not actively deciding who they are becoming because they're too busy trying to hold on to who they are, right? And so the question is, what are you doing? Are you actively and deliberately deciding who you are becoming? Or are you letting life and the circumstances around you decide who you are becoming? Because if you can take some time to deliberately decide who you are becoming, and obviously we're going to have a lot of practical exercises for you inside of this module, but if you can take the time to deliberately decide that, then you can literally change the trajectory of your entire life. You can become someone who effortlessly creates his or her dream life when you make the brain switch from who am I to who am I becoming, and you start to ask yourself that every single day. And like I said, we are going to have some extremely powerful exercises in the upcoming trainings that are going to allow you to effortlessly become that person who then effortlessly creates their dream life. Are you seeing how powerful this is? This is so absolutely powerful. And again, this is just one of the problems that we're going to be talking about. And this by itself is so amazingly powerful. So to really close out here, I want to go ahead and talk really quickly about the biggest sin of becoming, as well as the vocabulary of transformation. This is going to be very important to close out this first problem with society's paradigm, okay? The biggest sin of becoming and the vocabulary of transformation. The biggest sin when it comes to becoming whoever you want to be is identification and attachment. This is what people get wrong, and this is really the biggest sin that you can do when you are trying to evolve and when you are trying to become. And attachment and identification means when you start to repeat labels such as I am introverted, I am extroverted, I am a morning person, I am a night person, right? Anything that is I am, fill in the blank, right? Because the truth is that you are nobody. You are whoever you want to be. And so when you start to make things that are I am statements, what you are doing is you are speaking over yourself and you are making judgment about who you are. Now, why is this so important? Hey, Yasin, this is not a big deal. You're making a big deal out of this. No, let me explain to you exactly why this is so important. Because the truth is that words matter a lot, okay? Because how we say things is how we think things, okay? Because what words are, if you look at exactly what words are just labeled thoughts. That's all words are. And so how you speak is how you think. And so the words that we use literally reinforce certain thoughts about ourselves, thoughts about the world, thoughts about money, thoughts about our family. All of that is reinforcing certain thoughts. And so those labeled thoughts, when we think about ourselves, those are going to determine the result that we have in our lives, right? The thoughts that we have about ourselves, those labeled thoughts in the form of words, those are going to determine the world that we create. Those are going to determine who we become. And so it's absolutely critical that you are careful of the words that you use. In general, yes, but especially when you are talking about yourself. So what you want to do is you want to pay close attention to what you are criticizing, what you are judging inside of yourself, right? Start making conscious decisions to change those language patterns. This is so absolutely critical, right? They become habits. They become language patterns that we start to say about ourselves over and over and over again, right? So instead of saying, hey, I am a morning person, you could say, hey, I prefer mornings, right? And what you do is you're actually shifting away from the label, and you're making it more of a preference. Rather than it being a judgment that you've made in yourself, something that is stuck in stone that's a judgment, it becomes a preference that if you decided you wanted to change, if you decided you wanted to become somebody else, you could do so because it's just a preference. You have the freedom to change your preference, right? Today I like chocolate, tomorrow I like vanilla. Doesn't matter. But when you say I am, it becomes something that is such a stuck in stone judgment that this is who I am. Okay? And so this is so very valuable because of the fact that you are not your labels, you are not your characteristics. You can choose whoever you want to be based off the goal that you want to achieve. Because the goals that you have are each going to require a different version of yourself. And the characteristics of that character, the characteristics of that person are going to have to adapt and they're going to have to change in order for you to be able to go out and achieve the goals that you want to achieve. right? And so you're not your labels or your characteristics. You are always in a state of evolution. You're always in a state of becoming, and you're ever changing. Because people get too attached to their characteristics, and then they start to label themselves as such, and then they start to speak over themselves. Speak over themselves means that you start to speak about yourself in a certain way. And so this is why identity statements are so powerful, right? You must learn to become extremely careful of any statement that is an identity statement, right? Anything that is I do, I am, I should, I have, I must, anything like that. You have to start to become extremely cognizant of them. It's so absolutely critical, even if it's as simple as something like I am scared. Because when you say something like, hey, I am scared, what you're doing is you're making a judgment about yourself. And instead, what you probably mean is, hey, I feel scared because this is the first time that I'm doing sales. It's the first time I'm making an income online. It's the first time I'm doing marketing, right? And after enough times, I'll be able to get a hang of it. It shouldn't be an issue, right? And so rather than making a judgment that, hey, I am scared, period, you start to make that into a comma with further explanation, and it creates a completely different shift. Now, yes, I understand that in normal everyday speech, it can seem a little bit overkill, right? In quick slang jargon, it's easier to just say, I am scared. But in the mind, this actually makes a massive, massive difference. And so you must start to become extremely careful of the identity statements that you are repeating about yourself. It's so absolutely critical. And so this is why what you have to do is you have to make sure that you continuously engage in something that we call auditing identity statements, okay? At first, it's going to be tough because you're so used to speaking in a certain way. You're so used to speaking about yourself, about the people around you, all of the world around you. You're so used to speaking in that way. And in the start, you're going to find that you actually automatically say things about yourself, even without thinking about it. But here's the thing, the more you practice auditing your identity statements, you will start to get even better at it, and you will start to become even more careful with them. And then all of a sudden, you're going to get to the point where it becomes a reflex, and you immediately just start to recognize identity statements in yourself and in others, right? And the more you become aware of when yourself and people are saying things about themselves, the better you're going to get at being able to monitor and consciously choose those things. And you might even get to the point where other people, this is the crazy part about this, other people start to literally annoy you because of how much they speak over themselves constantly, right? I myself personally, right, whenever anybody that I care about is saying an identity statement about themselves, I literally will call them out on it every single time. I continuously will tell them, hey, watch it. What you just said there is an identity statement. Be careful of what you speak over yourself, because I care about them. I don't want them to say and speak into reality who they are becoming. And I personally care about this so much that literally for the people who are in my circle, either they have to start to change how they speak to themselves and about themselves, or for me personally, I am so strict on this that I will literally remove people from my circle because I will not put up with people speaking identity statements about themselves or even about me without them being careful about what it is that they say, okay? So when I look at the people around me, my family, our students, our employees, I've gotten to the point where literally I can diagnose based off of someone's language patterns. I can literally diagnose if they're going to be somebody who can transform, if they are somebody who's likely to grow, if they're somebody who is likely to be successful. And here's the thing, once you start doing these audits regularly, consistently, it becomes a reflex, you will also be able to see, this is the thought patterns and this is the language patterns of somebody who's successful. And you can notice that in other people, and you can notice that in yourself as well. And you'll be able to tell if somebody's going to be successful just based off of their language patterns, okay? And so you can tell what language patterns people are thinking about themselves by literally just looking at the results that they have in their lives. So even if you don't hear somebody speak, but you see somebody and you see the results that they have in their life, they're really struggling in life, they're really having terrible habits, you can immediately, it works both ways, tell how they speak about themselves. And even if you don't know the results that somebody has, right? You have the results, and then you have the thought/language patterns, right? And so by seeing the results, you can see what type of thought and language patterns they have about themselves. And maybe even without seeing the results, you can go ahead and observe their thoughts and their language patterns, and you can see what results they have. This is how powerful what it is that we're talking about is. And so this is the punchline. This is the bottom line for all of this. When you make identity statements, what you are literally doing is you are literally speaking over yourself and you are literally speaking into existence who you are becoming. And so when people say that I'm not good with money, well, guess what? That becomes their reality, right? So be careful what you label and identify yourself as, because it will 100% become reality, right? Maybe not once, maybe not twice, but the votes are being cast every time you speak on an identity statement. And over time, those votes will have a winner deciding who you are and effectively deciding what your life is going to be. And so who you are will create your reality. So instead of saying, I'm not good at technology, I am not a technology person, what you can instead start to say and start to reprogram into your vocabulary is, hey, I'm not good at this yet, and that's okay because I'm going to learn, right? I'm not good at making money yet as I would like to be, and that's okay because I'm going to learn. I'm not that good at sales yet, and that's okay because I'm going to learn. And so speaking like this gets you out of that pessimistic judgment mindset, and instead it turns it into an opportunity for you to get better. Never speak judgments over yourself, ever. Okay? And so closing thoughts here, just really hit this home and really put the nail in the coffin here. Some quotes that I really put together for you guys over the years. I love some of these quotes. They're absolutely game changers. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. What got you to where you are now will not get you to where you want to go. The person that got you to where you are now will not be the person who you will need to become in order to get to where you want to go. If you want something that you've never had, you have to become someone you have never been and do things that you have never done. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you have always been the same person, then you will always continue to get the same outcomes, okay? And so the world is going to ask you, hey, who are you becoming? Because remember, you're always becoming somebody, always, whether consciously or unconsciously. The world is going to ask you who you are becoming. And if you don't know, society and the world will tell you. This right here, my friends, is very serious, deep, and very important topic that we touched base on inside of this training. And with that being said, I want to go ahead and walk you guys through your engagement question for this training. We would love to hear what were your thoughts on society's big lie of identity. What part of this training was the most eye-opening for you? And also, what is one I am statement that you continuously tell yourself, and how are you going to replace it, right? Give us an example. We all have them, especially for those who are just learning about this topic from the very beginning. What is an I am statement that is disempowering for you? Because remember, there's two types of I am statements. There are empowering ones and there are disempowering ones. The empowering ones are the ones that get you to where you want to go, right? I am good at making money. I am really awesome at speaking to people. I am an amazing remote wellness practitioner. Those are empowering, right? And then the disempowering ones, those are the limiting ones. Those are the ones that are not getting you to where you want to go. What are examples of some disempowering identity statements that you tell yourself, and how are you going to replace them? Again, as always, a reminder, this is your opportunity to engage. We and the other students love to hear from you. We read all of your comments, and I'm super excited to hear your thoughts and biggest takeaways from this training. I will catch you on the next one.